Senators of the 10th Senate may have resumed their duties in the red chambers, but some would be looking over their shoulders due to the recent sacking of their colleagues. The latest senator to suffer this is the former governor of Benue State, Gabriel Suswam, who was sacked by the appeal court on Wednesday. The appellate court, in a unanimous decision by a 3-member panel of justices, said it was satisfied that Suswam was not the valid winner of the senatorial election that held in Benue Northeast on February 25. Joining us on the show to discuss this latest ruling is Gabriel Suswam, former senator representing Benue Northeast Senatorial District. Good morning, Senator Suswam, and welcome to the morning show.
Yeah, good morning. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Well, good morning, Senator. I don't know whether it's right to say our sympathies on the outcome of the Court of Appeal decision. But what's next for you? How do you feel about that ruling of the Court of Appeal, which upturned your victory at the level of the tribunal?
Yeah, Bati, thank you very much. I wouldn't say you were a victim, but you served in government, and when your tenure ended, you left the villa, and I didn't think that people should sympathize with you at that time. Nothing in life is permanent. And I believe that I started politics as a very young man in 1999. I've participated in 7 elections that have contested actively. Out of the 7, I won 5. I lost 2, including this one. And so it's a continuous process. I don't think that I need process. It's democracy. At some point, people will say, well, we don't want this. At some point, they will say yes. When I lost the first election, I came back, contested again with the same person who defeated me. And I defeated him overwhelmingly. And so I don't think I deserve, or I would say that sympathy. As a human being, this can be overwhelming, but then that is what democracy is all about. So I don't think that the issue of sympathy should come in.
All right, thank you very much, Senator Suswam. Earlier today, we'd had Mr. Kalu Agwe, lawyer, who had evaluated some of the judgments by the petitions appellate court in Plateau State, actually. And they had faulted, the PDP had faulted what they said was not consistent with rulings in other courts, including the Supreme Court, on this, during this election cycle. Are you of the same opinion that perhaps you didn't get fair hearing in terms of the your appeal? And then, would you also say that the panelists should be disbanded, as some PDP governors are calling for, the PDP itself is calling for? Or are you happy to accept the judgment and move on to other things?
Yeah, I will start with Plateau, then I'll come to my case. Actually, as a lawyer, one would have thought that election petition should have been treated better than they are currently. When, as a member of the 9th Assembly, we drafted the new Electoral, the amended Electoral Act, and the President signed it, became law, and INEC used it in conducting election. The expectation, or rather one would have expected that the judges, rather the judiciary, would have been on the same page among themselves. For instance, the interpretation of a lot of sections, different panels are interpreting the same section differently from others. That shouldn't be the case. That shows that the judiciary needs some tuning up. I think the CGN should be holding not training, but conferences to refresh most of the judges that come to take these cases, these electoral cases. Because the interpretation, one section, one panel will interpret the same section in a different way, another one will interpret in a different way. Even at the Court of Appeal, the same Court of Appeal, different panels are interpreting the same section differently. That shouldn't be the case. To that extent, I have a problem. It's not necessarily the problem of the judges. I think that the CGN has a lot to do in terms of bringing the judges to sit down together and look at some of these statutes, new statutes that have been passed by the National Assembly and assented to by the President. It's not just the Electoral Act. There are a lot of statutes that have been passed that most judges will be seeing or listening to it for the first time when a lawyer comes before them, once a case comes. That shouldn't be the case. It is expected that as the interpreter of statutes, they should be on top of their game. But that is not normally the case. And so I think that we need to re-energize the judiciary. Listening to what the Chief Judge, the retiring Justice of the Supreme Court said, it means that these are people who work a lot. In terms of what comes to them, they're highly discounted. So there are a lot of issues in this country that we shouldn't just limit it because we've lost election in court and then put the whole blame on the judges. I don't think so. Coming to my own situation, I won the case at the tribunal. And that is what I'm saying. The same interpretation, the same sections that gave me election at the tribunal in Benue are interpreted differently at the apex court. I believe that if that continues, people will, the confidence in the judiciary will continue to erode, because one would have expected that as judges, if one judge give an interpretation of the same section, that should flow through. Otherwise, confidence in the process is eroding and eroding very fast. But you don't actually place the blame on the judges, because given the condition, the environment under which they work, would expect that, you don't expect anything different, anything much from the judiciary, except when their working conditions are enhanced. So I don't blame the judges for my case, but I blame the system. There's a problem with the system. You can't have the same court, different panel, different judges interpreting the same section. One would have thought that they would be on the same page in the interpretation of most of this section, but that is not the case. There is something wrong somewhere within the system.
All right. Distinguished Senator, as we always say, let me ask the question that probably Ruben would have been the best person to ask, based on your response to the answer the question that Ruben asked. Has the phone stopped ringing?
Yeah.
The phone has stopped ringing. Okay. The phone has stopped ringing, right? It's okay. Ruben did say when you leave government, the phone stops ringing. But it's a good time to begin to reflect. And that's where I'm going with my question. So I will digress, move away from the issues of the law. The decision of the court is final and is absolute, I believe. But I'll let the lawyer in Ruben to question the issue of the judiciary. But let me ask you, over the years, you've been a two-term governor and you served. I don't know how well, I don't have the historical, empirical fact about your government, 8 years in government as governor of Benue State. So let me ask you, Benue State is not in the top 10 of those really high-flying states in Nigeria. So you have time now over the next 4 years. If you decide to go back to the Senate, that will be maybe in another 2-3 years before you make that decision and begin. But let's reflect on what's happening in Benue State, not in the top 10. What is wrong with that state? Is it all about insecurity? Or is there more that those who are governing the state can do? Because I have friends and family from Benue State, and it gives grave concern.
Yeah, thank you very much. The question you've asked, I don't think is limited to Benue State alone. In 1999, when democracy arrived on the scene, on the landscape of Nigeria, there were a lot of expectations. People expected that now they will be involved in the governance of their various states or the activities of government. And that was what led to the agitation of people that this country should return to democracy. A lot of expectations. Are this expectation met? Of course not. Is it the problem of the leaders? Of course, 50-50, because the problem of leadership and followership, where the leaders, with good intention most of the time, are distracted completely by different expectations from different stakeholders in the state. And as a governor, I can confidently tell you that what you think you are doing for the people, and they should appreciate it, is not appreciated. When I became governor in 2007, I grew up in Makedi, so I knew the expectation, I knew what they wanted. And I started to embark on projects. And unfortunately, I was doing roads within the state. I was giving the capital a first lift because it was looking basically like a village. And the story I was hearing from politicians, my followers, that is it road we will chop? Is it road that Suswam is doing so much road? If we finish the road and every person dies, who will walk on the roads? That can be very discouraging. This is something that I was doing to enhance the environment. And you know, with a good environment, there's more productivity. That is why in the Western economy, developed economies, they put a lot of emphasis on good working environment. I was creating that good working environment. I went to the party secretariat on tour, I think the first week that I was in Government House. I went to offices of permanent secretary, and I could not believe it. I decided that I would change the entire furniture. I will make sure that water is running in every thing. I provided 2 big generators, 1,000 kVA, so that there will be 24-hour electricity at the secretariat. So they will have an enhanced environment where they can enhance their own productivity. I increased the salaries of the entire Benue civil servant. When I came, a permanent secretary at that time, I think was collecting about 45,000. I moved the salary of permanent secretary to close to 500,000. That was to change their mentality, change their welfare, the environment for them to work. I told them we'll appreciate it. You won't believe that in my second term contest, those civil servants were the first people who were intentionally going out to make sure that I lost that election. As God will have it, I didn't. But I got very discouraged. So you have this experience across. What are the expectations of followership? What do they want you to do? And so people who came after would say that, well, because I've heard that a lot, they say, well, Suswam did this, but they didn't appreciate it, so why should I do it? And that is the bane of our democracy now. People no longer are motivated by what is on ground. People now look more for, let them have some cash in their pocket, not what to do as a governor or as a senator or even as a House of Reps or chairman. They are not interested. So it's a problem of both the followership and the leadership. You know, because I experience it in Benue. If you go to Benue, you see the infrastructure that I put on ground. I don't want to beat my chest or nod my head like an agama lizard, but you can go there. Whatever infrastructure you see on ground there, I participated in, or I put it on ground there. But there was no appreciation at all. I almost lost my second term election to come back as governor. These are people that had nothing, were not collecting any good money. I enhanced their welfare. I changed the environment. I embarked on construction of roads. They were asking me, is it roads we will chop? And so you have a lot of governors or people who are elected into offices confronting this kind of thing. Now, most of them, if you are not strong-willed, you can be completely discouraged. And so you begin to follow the followership, not the other way around. And so that has been the problem that we have, not just in Benue, but across the state. Yes, Benue is not in the top 10. There are a lot of factors outside of the one I've mentioned. The issue, money is a function. If we look at the table of revenue allocation in the country, Benue is way down the radar. And so in a basically agrarian society where you don't have any industry, you don't have anything that brings money, and then you are completely, or most of the time, almost 100% relying on the federal allocation. And the federal allocation comes, you have a lot of civil servants, you have a lot of overheads that you're going to pay. So the money that is left for project is very, very small. You need to be committed to be able to put in project. I was very committed, and so that was why I was able to do the little that I did. And the expectation was that my successors will come and pick up from that.
Well, Senator.
But leadership is something that is about the person. And so I would not want to comment on subsequent successors, but I comment on what I experienced and what I was able to put on ground.
Senator, well, earlier on you were talking about the interpretation of certain provisions in the law, which you said the way the interpretation came up at the tribunal, the interpretation at the Court of Appeal was different. Well, could you be more specific about those sections that you think there is conflict in terms of interpretation? Because I thought that at the level of the tribunal, okay, because at the level of tribunal, the main issue was about irregularities and then arithmetics, deduction and addition, on the basis of which your election was upheld. And the Court of Appeal simply said, look, the lower court erred by, which is additions of 5 out of 7 local governments and all of that. So, but what specific sections do you think the Court of Appeal misinterpreted?
Shogun, you look at, because one of the sections that feature prominently my tribunal case was Section 137 of the Electoral Act. And the case that took out Senator Abo from Adamawa State dwelled heavily on Section 137, and he was given judgment. Johanna even only presented one witness, but he had provided enough evidence based on documentary evidence that came from the field. And so the tribunal at the Court of Appeal said, look, what Section 137 says that once you are able to provide enough evidence based on what took place in the field, and it was obvious that you won this election, somebody else was declared, then you are the winner. But the interpretation at the tribunal is different from the interpretation at the Court of Appeal. In cases that have similar facts, on all fours, my case is the same as the one that took out Senator Abo. So I was a bit surprised that the interpretation in my case would be different from that of Senator Abo. That is what I'm talking about it. And if we look at it, you agree with me. And then the Court of Appeal in the presidential election say that Atiku and Obi did not provide alternative result for them to say that you won this election. There was alternative result in my own case, provided, agreed to by INEC. INEC didn't object to what my lawyers presented in court. INEC didn't disagree with that. And the result that we presented, the alternative result, which was based on what came from the field, was that I won the election with a certain margin. The results were put side by side. So I satisfied even that requirement based on the interpretation from the Court of Appeal. And that was also what the Supreme Court, under the leadership of Justice Okoro, did say, that how would they declare Atiku or Obi when they don't have an alternative result? We have an alternative result, which was predicated on concrete evidence from the field. It wasn't just a result that was manufactured from nowhere. And INEC agreed with us. And so, Segun, that is what I'm talking about. Those interpretations have become an issue. On the same section, the same court, interpreting it differently, then that leaves one to wonder what is really going on.
Well, Senator, just a small follow-up as we begin to wrap up. Do you have a life outside politics? You've been governor, you've been senator. Any life outside politics, or you are waiting to contest again in 2027?
Segun, I'm a lawyer. I've been a lawyer since 1990, and I'm involved in other things. There are a lot of other things that I do. My wife is an architect, so I'm an architect by marriage. So most time, if she's doing her thing, I also go there. So I can build your house down very well because I have learned from her. So there's a whole lot that I'm involved in. I have a small farm also in Benue that I pay attention to. So outside of politics, I'm involved in a whole lot of things. It's not just about politics or waiting to contest again. But politics, is like what Mao Zedong says, like the opium of the people. Once you get hooked onto it, it's difficult to pull out. Maybe you need rehabilitation to be able to pull out of politics. Otherwise, you stay there forever. And so politicians don't die too. As we finish now, they're planning 2027. So we'll wait and see how the country, where the country is taking us to, and then we'll take our own decisions as to what to do. But I'm doing other things as well.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Senator Gabriel Suswam. And wish you all the best in your endeavors, whether it's in architecture or to your farm, or agriculture to your farm, or perhaps moving on to waiting for 2027 during the next election cycle. Thank you for your time this morning.